Harold Young. I was in the Navy from February of 1941 to February 1947. I was stationed I started the war. I was stationed in Jacksonville, and then I was stationed in the Hawaiian Islands part of the time, and then Alaska, and Kodiak, Alaska, along with the end of the war. I figured that the best thing to do, I want to go. I always wanted to go in the Navy instead of going in the Army, and I knew that later on I'd be drafted if I didn't go in when I was 18. So I went in, and when I was 17, and I stayed till I was, I stayed 6 years. Mm-hmm. My daddy had just died when I was 16 years old, and I think they were kind of proud that I went because I was beginning to get in a little bit of trouble I shouldn't have got into, and I had my mother and a sister, and that's when I lived. I'm one of these dudes that never saw any really action, but I missed out on some things. I guess I was just lucky, because when I went overseas, you'd be surprised, but a Japanese sub caused me to miss out on going into the Philippines, because it shattered us all the way from San Francisco to Honolulu. So instead of taking 5 days, it took us 8 days to get out there. So once we got out there in April of 44, all of the ships had already left, so they left us right there, didn't know what to do with us. So after about 10 days, they assigned us to different things, and I was an aircraft inspector for most of the time when I was out there. Then later on, I got transferred. When I come back to the States, I got transferred to Kodiak, Alaska, and I spent the balance of the war up there. Mm-hmm. I didn't lose many, but I lost a few, and it would be. See, what I did all the time, I was in aircraft. I mean, I was in the PB-4Y2 squadron, which is B-24 in the Army, and it would be amazing. You'd come in you'd get up in the morning, you and your buddies would be there. You'd come in at noon, and they'd be collecting up the clothes, so you knew what had happened, because somebody had died. Mm-hmm. And it's things like that you remember. The plane would just go down, because the B-24 wasn't. We wasn't on the aircraft carrier. I spent a little bit of time on the aircraft carrier, but most of the time I was stationed on permanent bases, because I was part of the crew members of the B-24. So most of the time it was a plane would go down. Most of the time they were just absolutely, just wrecks from that. I never knew of one getting shot down, any that I knew. It was just the fact that if something would happen to them and they'd crash. So, when I was in Hawaii, I was inspecting aircraft. And one day I was standing out in the middle of the hangar, and I looked up, and some dudes were working on these doors are like 40 feet high in the hangar, and these things, they were turning over, and everybody run except one. He was kind of a dude that paid no attention to what anybody said, and we were screaming and hollering at him. He never moved, and he died right there. When that thing fell, it got him. But everybody you can't imagine how we were all hollering at him, but he was just one of those dudes that just didn't pay no attention to what people were saying. But if you stand there, it's horrible to sit there and watch somebody when you know what's going to happen. That's what happened there. And when I was in Alaska, we patrolled the Aleutian chain. And somebody asked me if I'd ever been to Russia. I said, no, but I've looked at it. So we used to fly, we used to fly all the way out and all the way back, and we'd fly all over Alaska and Canada. But we'd fly out every day in the Aleutian chain. It's all through there. I spent time I went up there in December, and you imagine I'd been in the Pacific for all that time and never saw any cold weather, and went up there at 20 below zero. I thought I'd go freeze to death. It's the coldest I'd ever seen. Of course, I think I got as cold in Chicago as I did up there. It seemed like Chicago was one of the coldest places you've ever been. Well, you know, you're in barracks up there, so you're fine. You just put on more clothes, you know. But you just wear more. That's all. But the problem I had to buy them because I got rid of all my heavy stuff. Because you know, you don't carry all that old heavy stuff around with you. You don't need it. Mm-hmm. I started out at $21 a month, but that was apprentice seaman's pay, and then you went to $36 a month, and then you went on up, and it got pretty good before I got out, but not today's pay level. But at least I was a first class aviation metalsmith when I got out. Mm-hmm. So I went from $21 to about, because I drove flight pay, I drove overseas pay. So time it all added together, by the time I got out, I was making $800 a month, which was a lot of money during that time. Mm-hmm. So I sent money to my mother. So mm-hmm. I always had wherever I was, I'd had me a bank account, so in case I, you know, needed quick money, I could go get it sometime. Mm-hmm. So I went into work one day, and as I got there, they come in and told me to report to the Navy Bureau of Investigation. And it was kind of scary because, you know, something's got to be going on. So I walked in, and they told me that I'd been charged with espionage. And I said, why? And they told me that what had happened was we were working on a wing of a plane, and I had all kinds of special tubes that I had made, and I had my initials on every tube. Well, this wing was not completed, so it wasn't completed, but I had left a bar in the side, and the report was that this wing had gone out and got on the plane, and of course that would have wrecked it. That's what it had done. So when I went in, and after I explained it to him, he went. He was a lawyer. He went in, and then after he investigated and he found out that I was right, then that's when we found out that dude just didn't like me, was all it was, for some reason. And I guess he thought he could probably get my job, because I had about a crew of about 6 working for me, and I was the lowest mate. I was a seaman second class, and I had first class petty officer working for me. And after that, then all of a sudden, I've become second class petty officer, and I skipped all of them just like that. So it wound up being a good thing. So, mm-hmm. Well, I come home on leave, and I was 19 years old when I got married. Come home on leave, and got married and went back, and when I was 20 years old, I had a daughter. So the Navy's it's just a good place to be. It's got they'll send you to school, or you'll get, you know, if you do the right things, you can get promoted. You know, it's just of course it's scary sometimes, but it's good. You've been amazed at one of my buddies. I'm 5'9", weighed 130 pounds, and my buddy I run around with was 265, 6'6". He was University of Alabama football player. So I never had any problem. I never got in trouble because I could do anything I wanted to, because he could get me out of it. Mm-hmm. And but they see us together, and they said it called us Mutt and Jeff, because I was so small. And his name was Fulford, but he was a good dude, the old boy. But he played football for the University of Alabama. So I come back I come back on aircraft carrier. Come back from we come back to San Francisco. We come in. There was a storm that hit, and we had this steam around all night outside. You couldn't sleep because it would roll you around in your bunk. Come in before you could get in. We come on in. And I had a Japanese rifle that I got. When I got in, they took my rifle away from me and said I'd get it back, but I never saw it again. But I hitchhiked by planes. I mean, I went from Army base to Army base, and of course, that was right after the war ended, and they would let me ride from one base to the other, and I flew all the way back to to Memphis. But I said I went under the Golden Gate Bridge, I went over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I flew over it, so there wasn't much left of the things that we did. Used to lay there and look at Alcatraz and think of all them. Alcatraz was a prison at that time. So of course, you drill so many hours a day, and that was the main thing it was, you know. And then you didn't, in basic training, you had some schooling. You didn't have much, but you had that little bit. But it was pretty rough. They always some old chief over retired. They brought all them old chief petty officers back, and they were tough as pine knots, most of those dudes were. And they'd give you a fit if you didn't walk just exactly right. You got extra duty, all that kind of stuff. They had, most of the time it was good food. You know, your eggs and breakfast were powdered eggs, but they wasn't bad, you know. It's that. But the Navy feeds good. They have most everywhere. They have cook and baker schools, and if you can eat there, you get good food because of the fact that that's what they get their grade on. But the food's always good. You eat a lot of beans, you can figure that. You know, I never saw one. I think that's the main thing they fed. So they put you in a building. You got a gas mask on, and all of a sudden they tell you take that gas mask off, and there's gas in there. And you talking about wanting to get out. You want to get out of there. What they're doing is teaching you to keep the gas mask on when you put it on, showing you how efficient they are. And they do. They protect you from that. But when you pull that gas mask off, you got to get out of there. And of course, it wasn't deadly gas, but it was a form enough that you know what it was. I think it's good. It's a good experience. Now you can make out of it what you want to.